This is the A to Z podcast. Expert insights on leadership, business, real estate, investing, and growth.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how to build an elite team with purpose. We're going to talk about recruitment, faith, leadership, culture. Most importantly, we're going to talk about how to scale using best people. And I have an expert who has done this again and again for many founders. And he's going to show you how you could be able to bring, attract, and maintain and create a culture for the best people who could help you scale. And his name is Kejal Shah. He's the founder of Keepro, which is a fast growing consulting and also recruiting company. Kajal, thank you. I know how busy you are, but you are willing to be here and share your experience and how you have been helping founders. I know your story, but for people who may not know your story, and also I know some of your interesting stories, but I don't know how far and how much you want to share. So I want to let you take a few minutes and summarize your journey in the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, AZ, and I'm excited to be here. So, yes, my name is Kejal Shah. I'm the founder of Keepro. We are one of the fastest growing recruiting and HR firms in the United States. So, my journey is very unique. You and I, AZ, have had so many different conversations in the past. To give a brief overview, I've been in the recruiting and HR space for a little over 12 years now. So, a fun little fact about me, I never thought about getting into recruiting and HR as an actual career. When I first walked off the college campus over 12 plus years ago, I was kind of in a weird life situation where I felt like God was calling me to do marketing and branding and sales and all of that fun stuff. And then all of a sudden, I found myself sitting for an interview with a company called Renewal by Andersen, or Andersen Windows. A lot of people don't realize that Andersen Windows is actually one of the largest window and patio door companies in the world, in the country. So when I sat down for that interview, I went into it kind of clueless. And when I got halfway through the conversation, the director of sales, Ricky, looked at me in that conversation over 12 years ago, and he said, I don't know why, but I feel like you'd be really amazing at doing recruiting and some HR and some sales work. Did you ever think about doing that as a career? And to which I said, heck no. No, I never thought about that, especially just walking off the college campus. So I feel like God presented an opportunity when I least expected it. Definitely didn't think much of it. And then, within the first 3 months, we had over 30 hires for their team. So, I think, first of all, God gave me certain gifts that I realized I was really good at recruiting, and I wanted to help companies grow and scale. And I think throughout the year of working for the team, they promoted me to be the lead recruiter over all 8 market territories across the Midwest for recruiting, which was insane. I was traveling like crazy, and I was interviewing. I was doing some sales on the weekends. It was a lot, but we had 144 hires in a calendar year, which had never been done before. And I had to create new systems and processes and best practices in an innovative way around HR and recruiting. And so that was kind of my first taste of actually building something unique and doing it to help the company really grow and scale the right ways. And then from there, I was exposed to several different Fortune 100 and 500 companies I had the privilege of working for. I was a director of recruiting for Northwestern Mutual for a short time. Then I found myself as a talent acquisition director manager for a logistics company based out of my hometown in Cincinnati. Then I went to Indeed. Then I got poached by Caesars Entertainment to be their director of recruitment marketing. I've had so many unique experiences. I've traveled all over the country, but for me, I always go back to 2 things. One, how are we attracting, developing, and retaining great talent? And then number 2, how are we loving people beyond the paycheck? And when it comes to recruiting, I think a lot of us get so transactional about recruiting that we forget that you have to lead with empathy. And empathy is really how you win in the long term. when it comes to attraction, development, and retention. So that's a brief, like 30,000 foot view to give your audience kind of a bigger picture of who I am and what is my main focus, keeping the first things first.
So from your story, what I assess is that when you got that opportunity, got given opportunity, you didn't waste that time. You jumped in and you utilized. A lot of people, opportunity shows up and they don't discern it and they don't take advantage of that kind of situation. Second, you didn't just get an opportunity and you wasted it. You worked hard, you over delivered, and that led you to open your own company. Today, you are impacting a lot of founders. I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is about founders struggling to scale. I wrote a book called Scale to Last. And part of the motivation for me was myself, a founder, struggled to scale. I didn't know what was wrong. And when I realized what was wrong, I started to study. I started to talk to people who scale. And I realized that it's not a rocket science. There are a couple of things you could do with the same time, energy, and resources that you have to scale. And I know you helped a lot of founders to scale. But let's talk about why is that a lot of founders struggle to scale.
So this is something that's going to ruffle some feathers with people. Okay. So I hope your audience is
Do it,
buckled
please.
up, ready to go. So the first thing is that a lot of business owners let their pride get in the way of hiring. And what I mean by that is many business owners think that they know how to do everything. They think that they're an expert on all things talent and all things in every department, and they're not. I take the approach that Steve Jobs did. I don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. I hire smart people to help me innovate and do things better than everyone else and trust them to do it. And a lot of managers feel like micromanagement is the only option for them because they haven't set up the right systems and processes to trust their people and to know exactly what they expect from them. So a lot of times when people come into the interviewing process, business owners, they'll puff up their chest. They'll say, oh, you're coming to me for a job, when it should really be the exact opposite. You really want to win in the hiring game. Business owners need to start taking more of an approach of what is it in it for the candidate first. Even in this economy, there's millions of people that are being laid off from jobs, but the best candidates that you're looking for, the people that are going to really take you to the next level, you have to show them a vision that they can get bought into, not just you as a person and how amazing you think you are. It's about how can you make your people more amazing when they walk out the door. At one point or another, team members will walk out the door. What is the lasting impression that you want to create in their lives? How do you want to invest in their growth and their development? Because a lot of companies, they also forget, which is going to lead me to the second thing, is that your employees are your greatest brand advocates. And I beat this into so many founders, owners, CEOs' heads that your team members are actually going to represent your brand better than your clients many a times, because your clients are going to be treated well or not based on your team members and their perception of your leadership. So if you're not treating your people well, how do you think that your team members are treating your own clients? Let alone when those team members leave your company, what are they posting on Glassdoor? What are they saying on LinkedIn? What are they saying on Facebook? What are they saying to their best friends or other prospect hires or company talent that might be looking at joining the same company they just left, your company? Like a lot of business owners don't think about these things. They get so caught up in it's all about me. You have to kill your ego. You have to. You have to make it in the best interest of the candidate. Otherwise, you will not win in the hiring game. So those are the top two things. And if I were to add a third, just because like this is something I'm so I talk about it so much with business owners, you have to constantly be recruiting. You have to keep searching for talent. A lot of companies, they'll call me up, business owners, they'll call me up and say, hey, Kejal, I need to hire 2 or 3 salespeople in the next 2 months. I need them yesterday. Find them for me. Like just find them out and pull them out of thin air. And I'm like, didn't you know you're going to have some big growth goals going into Q2 or Q3 of this year? Oh yeah, I definitely knew, but I'm coming to you now. That's the most important thing, right? I was like, no, the most important thing is that 30, 60, 90 days ago, this should have been part of your
Yeah.
growth strategy. Your people will take your company from good to great, not you. So those are the top three things I would say.
Outstanding. I want you to emphasize this. You mentioned them, but I want them to be emphasized because when I come from the leadership side of it, and whenever I talk to leaders, I tell them that when you want to bring A players, you have to change your demeanor, your approach. They're not ordinary people. These people have options somewhere else, and therefore, even from the recruitment point onward, you have to treat them differently. Don't think like you are interviewing them and qualifying them. You have to also be prepared to be qualified, whether you are the right CEO and founder to work with, because that's the mentality high performers have. Can I work with this founder? And like you said, if they see ego, if they think that you're going to micromanage them, they're out. Even if you offer them the job, they don't take it. Would you please talk a little bit about how, because you help founders to bring A players, elite, building elite teams, and that requires a different mentality from the founders. And please talk about the approach founders should follow when they recruit and hire and retain high performers.
So there are 6 principles that I always go back to. 3 of the principles examine what an ideal team player's character attributes look like. So those are 3 key things. And then 3 things that the business owner needs to understand about the person as a whole. So I'm going to address the 3 character attributes first. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Humble, hungry, and smart. Humble being that the team members that you're looking to hire within your team have to have a sense of empathy and humility that is not seen amongst anyone else in the interviewing process. They have to show you that they care and they actually are more interested in being a value add to the company and admitting when they make mistakes. I've talked to thousands of candidates over the last 12 years. How many people really take ownership over their mistakes or their issues or things that they're not doing well? So humility is the huge big one. Hungry. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If your team members that you're interviewing don't seem like they're excited, if they're not like really aggressively in a good way, like aggressive in the right ways about trying to grow, trying to develop, and really trying to give the company the best of what they can offer, and also hunt down opportunities to grow the company and keep their eyes open for new prospects or new clients, you can't hire people that you have to force them to do their job. They have to have that sense of motivation on their own accord. And then lastly, smart. I don't hire the smartest people in the world per se just based on their IQ. I hire smart people based on their EQ, their ability to have emotional intelligence and to be able to read the room, to understand, to connect with people, because 99% of what we're dealing with in our society with AI is the lack of human connection. If you have team members that cannot connect on a deep level with your clients or your other coworkers, your other team members, the other candidates in your company, it's a never-ending battle and you'll never win. So that's the first half of the character. The 3 other components of understanding the candidate, who that person is, and what
Before you go those 3, I because you brought a very important thing that I see constantly, which is when people founders don't use a person like you, an expert in recruiting. What they do is they go out and trying to recruit someone with, let's say, off-chart technical abilities, neglecting the most important aspects of soft skills like EQ, emotional intelligence. Have you seen that companies do this? And also, what do you advise them to make sure that the people they bring, not only they are qualified in terms of technical skills, but also softer skills. On top of EQ, are there any other softer skills that they need to pay attention to when they hire?
So it's a tricky balance. Every industry is a little bit different, right? Some industries are going to require that the candidates have like 90 to 95% of all the technical skill sets that a company is looking for, just because of the nature of the position being a highly technical trade. If we're talking about software developers, if we're talking about cybersecurity, if we're talking about, healthcare professionals, it could be someone that really needs to understand the technical side. So that's a component that we have to acknowledge. But my rule of thumb is that if you're going to hire someone, they need to have about 70 to 80% of the skills attributes up front to be able to say they know enough to be dangerous. And then the other 20 to 30% is all character. It's all about, are they humble? Are they hungry? And are they smart? And if they don't check those other three boxes over here that we're talking about, and they got all these amazing attributes, that last 30% is actually the most critical. So it's that 30% that you need to be paying more attention to. Most companies, most business owners don't focus on that. They're always focused on, does this person have all the skills that are good on paper? If you can train that person, if that person knows like 70 to 80% of what their skill set in their trade is, and there's little things that they need to do to grow or to learn more, no candidate is going to know exactly every software or tool that your company offers and has used it before. Why would you expect that unrealistically from candidates? If they're good at using a similar software that they've done in another capacity before, then you need to see if their character attributes align more to the position rather than the technical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Keep on going. I know you have three more components that you want to cover on the other side.
So if we're talking about the other side of the game, AZ, it really comes back to three core pillars that we believe in within my team. Whenever I hire from my community within my organization, it comes back to purpose, passions, and promises. So of those three pillars, if the person that's looking to be part of my team doesn't understand what their God-given purpose is, even if they don't believe in faith or if they're not a Christian, and share all the same values that I do, I want them to understand what they're called to do and what they should be doing using their unique gifts and attributes. So that's the purpose side. Passions. What are they actually really excited about doing? Do you know how many times we try to fit a square peg into a round circle when it comes to hiring? We try to force people into jobs that they're not even that excited or passionate about. They might have 20, 30 years in sales experience, but it may not be what they are really passionate about doing anymore, or marketing, or hospitality. It could be a number of different things. You have to understand, what is the person passionate about today, not 20 years ago, not when they first started their career, today. And then promises. What are the non-negotiables between you and the candidate? What are the non-negotiables for the candidate side, where their cutoff is 5:30? Like, they're not going to work past 5:30 because they got to go take care of their kids. They have other responsibilities out of the office. Are you going to honor their promises and their commitments as a candidate? A lot of companies think, oh, it's all about they need to come and sacrifice their entire lives to work for me. No, like Gary Vee even said, why would you expect for your people to take as much ownership in your company when you're the one that took on all the risk, all the responsibility? You can't expect that from people. Unless you're willing to pay them to the moon and give them equity in your company, you need to be more realistic about, hey, I'm paying these people an hourly or salary at X amount of time during the week. If they're not productive during these hours, that's my fault. So you have to understand, what are the promises that you're making between the candidate and the company before they even start? And are those promises in alignment with what the candidate is looking for? Not just what you're looking for, but what the candidate needs to feel like they're being respected and appreciated for their time, energy, and effort.
I love it. Most of the problems that teams face, they could have been avoided if they follow those three important components, which is a purpose, passion, and also whether that person shares your values.
Promises.
and yeah, and also the promise and the priority that they have. I always believe that if you make it win-win, which means you're not only winning and your company is profiting, but if you create an environment, a culture where the people who are coming to work also win, which means to use the opportunity to pursue their purpose, to engage in their passion, and also meet some of their goals, priorities, then they feel like this is my company. They don't say this is your company. And also they cannot wait to come on Monday, and they don't like it when Friday comes. And this is the responsibility of the founder and creating that kind of environment. And I love it. This leads us to talk about why many, maybe most hiring failed, partly because of the people who are hiring, and you've been working with them. Most probably they call you in the middle of the night once they failed to recruit. When they're desperate, they're gonna call, Kejal, you have to save me. Would you tell us the common mistakes in hiring?
A lot of times, what I've seen with our clients, AZ, is that they do wait until the last minute to start looking at hiring for their teams. Kind of what I was alluding to before early on in this conversation is that my rule of thumb is that if you know that 30 or 60 days from now that either a team member or an empty chair is going to take place in your team, you need to start looking for that hire about 30 to 60 days prior. So you need a runway of about 2 to 3 months to really find good quality of talent that you're looking for. Typically for our team, it's a little bit different because we're spending thousands of dollars on Indeed and LinkedIn to get hires in within 30 to 45 days for our clients typically. But it's the runway. Like, you have to think about it like you're charting a plane. You're trying to take off. You're growing your team. You're trying to really build and get the company off the ground. You need the right components to the plane. Otherwise, the plane can't function and it cannot take off. So each person is a pivotal part of that plane and its construct. You have to give enough runway to be able to build the plane as it's taking off. Otherwise, you'll never take off. And that runway for every company usually is about 30 to 60 days out before you need to hire for that position. So I usually recommend 2 to 3 months in advance. You need to start thinking about who you need to be hiring. If you don't already have it into your annual budget or your annual planning, then you're already 5 steps behind, because the hiring game now is not a question of whether or not there's enough candidates in the talent pools. The question is whether or not all the people that are out there, which of the ones are going to fit the purpose, the passions, the promises, the humble, the hungry, the smart, all 6 of those components mesh together for your specific team. You can find a million people, but are they the right fit for you? That's what's the most time consuming part of the whole journey of hiring and developing and retaining talent.
Let's talk about the difference between average hires and A players. Is there a way you could be able to tell this hire is average and your client is not interested in hiring an average? This one is A player. Is there a way you could be able to quickly assess and make a call, this is an A player?
So we actually built our own AI software, AZ, that helps us do a skills analysis of people. So a lot of companies want to know upfront whether the candidate has the right thought process or the right technical skill sets to be able to initially fit the jobs that we're interviewing them for. So we take all of our candidates to the best of our ability through that AI skills assessment through our career portal that's on our website. People can go on there and use it for free to find better jobs if they're in career transition. So I'll give a quick shout out to that as a great tool or a great resource for everyone to take a look at. So taking that initial assessment gives us a really good understanding, a good picture of who that person is. What are the top 3 positions that that person is really interested in, barring against whatever jobs that that company might be looking to hire them for. a lot of the mistakes that we make in hiring is that we try to force people into interviewing for positions that we think is good on paper, but that's not really necessarily the case. So that's the first half. And then the second piece is, again, it's measuring those 6 key pillars. It's humble, hungry, smart. And if they're not scoring above an 8 out of 10 on humble or hungry or smart initially, don't move them past the first stage of the interviewing process is what I usually recommend to our clients or even my own team members. I have a couple of recruiters that work for me directly that are sourcing hundreds of candidates every single month, if not thousands. And I always tell them, look, if they're not checking the box around humble, hungry, and smart, don't move them forward, because they're going to end up costing the company more money, more time, more stress. And it's also going to cause us more time, money, and stress, because they're not a great fit for the company because they can't pass those 3 virtues. And then if the candidate also isn't sure of their own purpose, their passions, or their promises are non-negotiables, then why are we going to waste our time on hiring people that aren't really aware or prepared for the interviewing process?
I completely agree. Definitely. During the interview, sometimes I suggest to leaders is that if you want to hire, you need to ask these scenario-based questions, because I see, for example, recruiters asking yes or no questions. Are you a hard worker? What do you expect from the prospect? They will say, oh yeah, I'm a hard worker. Do you respect time? Oh yeah. Do you have any issues dealing with people? No. And you ask them about some of their weaknesses, they will tell you something like, I'm a hard worker, I'm a hard, I'm work alcoholic, something which is not a real weakness. But the pros, like you, they use scenarios, and based on those scenarios, you could be able to tell whether someone is a high performer or not. And also, you see that when a high performer, when they come, like you said, they already know their passion, their purpose, their non-negotiables. They ask you questions when you give them the opportunity. They try to also assess and see whether they work with you. Based on those little things that you observe and the way they answer, you could be able to tell. Let's talk about the culture. That's where I think a lot of companies struggle. They may hire you to bring A players, and you bring them A players. But if they don't know how to retain and nurture A players, if they don't have the right culture, it doesn't matter. I want to hear from you how you help these founders to create that culture so that they're not just getting A players, but also they have the environment that could retain these A players.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, man, because I've talked to hundreds of different business owners for the past 12 years. And the common theme really comes back to, how does the owner and founder treat his team members? And, as cliche as that sounds with building a culture, you know, you have to go directly to the source, right? And a lot of times people, I think the age old adage of people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses is fairly true. I think people don't leave jobs, they leave environments where the culture is not conducive to feel like they're actually contributing to a bigger purpose. That's why it's so important. I go back to purpose, passion, and promises. You have to understand that at a granular level to build your culture for every single one of your team members. So I make it very simple for a lot of business owners. I say, look, if you yourself are not humble, hungry, and smart as a business owner, you can't be a business owner. You shouldn't be a business owner. If you're not patient, if you're not empathetic, if you're not hungry enough to get out there and to fight hard to protect your people and to find new clients for your team, and you're not humble enough to admit that you don't know everything, then you're not going to build any kind of culture. So it starts with you as the founder, as the owner, first keeping those 3 principles at the heart of who you are and owning those for yourself. So that's the first part of building your culture. The second kind of goes into 3 key pillars, 3 principles of, I think, leadership that exemplify who I am and how I treat my own team members, right? And I share this with a lot of business owners I've had this conversation with around culture and developing their teams. 1, You have to always think about how to love your people beyond the paycheck first, even before yourself. I mean, there's times, man, where I've went 3 or 4 months without a paycheck. And I'm not saying that for a pat on the back. I'm not saying that to lift myself up. I'm saying if you're not willing to make that level of sacrifice to literally bleed for your business and for your people so that they have job opportunities, then you can't be a business owner. You can't build a culture. So love people beyond the paycheck is number one. Number two, you have to be willing to admit that you don't know everything. And it goes back to the humility piece of it. But there's times where I've had to be realistic and say, look, I can be good at selling who I am and like what Keepro represents as a company, but maybe I'm not the best salesman. Maybe there's someone better in the team that I need to trust to be able to lead those initiatives. And that kind of leads into the third principle, which is always apply the Peter principle. Do you happen to know what that is, AZ?
Which principle?
The Peter principle.
No, please.
So the Peter principle is based on an age-old story in the corporate world where an HR leader and a manager with a mid-level manager over a sales department hires a guy named Peter. Peter, amazing guy, great heart, sweet-hearted guy, but he sucks at sales. He's just absolutely trash. He's just terrible at doing sales. But the HR manager gets this amazing idea. Peter's really great with interacting with clients. Like, we can trust him enough to represent our brand well enough. Why don't we rotate him into a couple of different positions? Why don't we try to put him into different roles and see which one fits him best? Do that for the team members that are bought into your vision and your mission as a team. Give them the opportunity to pivot. I've done this with several of my own team members. I had one young lady, she actually started off in recruiting from me. Then she moved over and pivoted to do a lot more sales and marketing work, and then digital content creation, email campaigns. And she was really good at doing this stuff. And if I didn't give her that chance, if I didn't apply the Peter principle and move her around into different chairs to let her get a feel of what she enjoyed most, then she would have never landed where she is today, where she's a career strategist helping nonprofits with their people find jobs. And like, she's been with my team for over a year, and she absolutely is loving working with, single moms or nonprofits that we're partnered with. So it's like, love your people beyond the paycheck, be humble enough to admit when you don't know everything and pass it over to someone that does. And you have to apply the Peter principle at all times, because if you got someone that's really bought into the vision and the culture and they believe in you, who you are as a leader, you want to move them around until you have no other choice. That's my philosophy in a quick 30,000 foot view. There's more to it, but that's like the core of what you need to be focused on in building your culture. And with all those other pillars mixed in between that.
Yeah, definitely. Culture, you may already know, Peter Drucker, he said that culture eats strategy for a breakfast, which means whatsoever people, strategy, finance, whatever you have, product and services, if you don't have the right culture, forget about it. The environment is key. And also, I wrote a book, Culture That Works, and I resonate with what you were saying. For example, rather than the founder himself or the top leadership taking the initiative in creating the culture, they delegate. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work because you said, if I'm not demonstrating what the culture is, other people don't buy it. And I cannot delegate to people to create that culture for me. I have also seen that sometimes they autopilot culture. Maybe they copy a culture from these successful companies. They bring it in, they espouse, these are our values, this is the culture we want to have, but they don't nurture it. They think, okay, once I tell them this is the culture, once we espouse our values, the values are pillars of the culture, it should run by itself. But culture is like a garden. If you don't take care of it, nurture it, what happens? Weeds gonna grow and so on. It's hard work. And I'm glad that you are going beyond recruiting, beyond bringing A players, because that's where they struggle. The founders to take initiative, to demonstrate, to show humility, empathy, and to help their people live in especially A players. You can comment on that one. One thing I learned is that you bring A players in a mediocre culture, and therefore they cannot survive, because these A players, they have clarity. They know what they want to achieve, their goals, priorities, and they don't want to play politics, these scapegoating. If the culture is toxic, they're going to walk away. First, you're going to lose your A players because they have other options. Headhunters like yourself, they will find them. That's why the moment they see a toxic culture, they walk away. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sayings that I keep coming back to in my head around culture. Number one, culture is defined in how we empathize with our team members and how we get things done. So those two things in and of itself is how are we communicating and how we're treating other team members is what really builds the culture. And you have to lead with empathy. And how are you holding your people accountable to get those things done in the culture? Do you have an accountability strategy? Do you have a growth and development strategy? Those two or three things in and of itself make such a huge difference. And I'm also a very firm believer that culture lives and dies in mid-level leadership. I'm going to say that again. Culture lives and dies in your mid-level leadership. So you're sitting here at the top as the business owner. You got all these other people right up underneath you, and then you got all those people underneath them. Those people right there, right in the sweet zone, right in that sweet spot, could be a director of sales, could be a CMO, could be your COO, it could be a number of different people. If those people are not bought into the purpose, passion, and promises of your organization, not just mission, vision, values, the purpose, passion, and promise of what created the company as a whole from the very beginning, it will destroy the very fabric of the entirety of the company. And I've seen that firsthand. You know, I've worked in Fortune 100 and 500 companies. I'm not allowed to disclose all the big clients that I worked with, but you know, I've had the privilege of working with Tesla. I've worked with Shutterfly. I've worked with Gorilla Glue. I've worked with UPS. I've worked with FedEx. I've worked with some of the biggest companies that the country has ever seen in America. And it's the same old thing of, you know, a lot of hiring managers and a lot of mid-level leaders have either unexpressed, underappreciated, or uncommunicated expectations around how to attract, develop, and retain their talent. And if you can't hold those mid-level leaders accountable for how you're treating the candidates as they're walking through your front door and how they walk out of your door, then you'll never win in the hiring game.
I'm glad you brought you brought the middle level issue, because I have had my own personal experience. I remember I was hired. I was excited to work with a company, and the top leadership, they always talk about our culture is clean. If you see somebody doing something wrong, or if you don't like something, if somebody says something, there's something that hurts you, don't backbite. Don't talk about it. First, give them feedback. And then if they don't listen, if they don't practice, come and tell me. And the ground rule is, don't talk about somebody or come to me and report to me any issue before you talk to the other person. And I was new. I really loved that. And I remember I was standing in line to get my lunch. And over there, I could hear whatever they were talking. These are middle leaders. They were talking about someone on, in the line, one of the team members, and they were just dissecting that guy. They were backbiting, and I was like, I immediately lost respect to that company, because even its middle leaders are doing against the culture. One time also, I was invited to do a consulting work to see whether there is values alignment in that culture. And the top leadership, they told me, AZ, we don't understand why the board of directors want us to do this values alignment. We are aligned from top to bottom. The CEO, especially, he resented that. When I came in, I told him, don't worry, I have questioners. I have the kind of questions I ask. to tell you the statistics, whether it's an aligned culture or not. And when I interviewed the top leadership, they are very much aligned. But middle level leadership completely disconnected. And when I showed him the data, here is what you espouse, and here is what the middle leadership understands and do, and how that's affecting people at the bottom, he was shocked. And you're right, sometimes the founders, they think that if they are exemplary to the culture, if they do their best, they think nothing could go wrong, and they neglect the middle. And when the middle breaks, sometimes you don't even recognize it. You don't even see you're bleeding. It's a dangerous place that you need to pay attention to. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, one quick thing, AZ, that I do want to also emphasize is that you have to be very careful about how you talk about team members. And I'm glad you brought that piece up too, because that's a lot of times what turns a culture very toxic. I've sat in the room with the CEO of other companies that I've worked with that I built a really strong rapport with, a really good friendship with, and they would be bashing other team members, or they would be talking about their performance levels with me directly. Granted, I was a director of talent acquisition, so my position directly was influenced by how current team members were growing and developing, so I understood how we need to hire better. But the perception that you create when you're hiring people, and how you treat them and how you talk about them in front of other team members, you have to stay away from doing that. And that's something, as an owner and as a founder, I've had to be very careful about, of like saying in a good, healthy way, this person is a great person. Absolutely love them. They're incredible. There's some areas of growth and improvement. I know that if we worked with them, they can get to a better level. Let's find a way to do that and make it a productivity conversation, and make it all about how are we empowering and growing them, instead of critiquing and criticizing them, because that makes them lose all hope in their future, because eventually someone hears about it and someone will gossip about it, and that's like 99% of what really destroys the motivation for someone wanting to be in your company long term.
Yeah, you're right. It's very devastating, and the top leadership should pay attention to and see how things are going. They should have some ground rules to clean this kind of toxic environment. I want to talk about your business, recruitment business. What kind of leadership it requires to scale a recruitment business? Maybe there are people who are in your business, in your industry, even if they are not in your industry, they may learn from your approach. Please share with us the kind of leadership that you follow that's helping you to scale your recruitment business.
Well, I appreciate that question, but I have to be very frank with you, AZ. I made a covenant with God about 2 years ago. So I'll hit the rewind button 3 years. So Keepro has been in business for 7 years. God gave me the vision and started Keepro 7 years ago. About midway through running Keepro and still having another day job, corporate America at Indeed and then Caesars Entertainment, God put it on my heart to say, if we ever were successful as a team, I have to do two things. One, I have to always give God the credit. So I'm never going to take the credit myself. So I'm not going to sit here and think that the reason we are successful is because of me. I think that God has given me unique and amazing gifts and talents, but we really are where we are because I believe in my people. I believe in what we have to offer in the marketplace is unlike any other quote unquote staffing or recruiting agency or any HR firms that are really out there in the marketplace. And the whole vision behind why we do what we do and the very foundation of who we are is because of the pain that I felt 7 years ago. I left a corporate recruiting job in the financial services world, and I was heartbroken. I said to God, Lord, I don't know what to do. I'm sick and tired of working for bosses that don't respect or appreciate my time, energy, or effort. and I don't feel like I'm getting compensation enough for all the effort that I put in. What's the bigger plan? Like, what's the bigger vision? And I think a lot of us get caught up in this um, rat race of the corporate American lifestyle. And I bought into it for the first 7, 8 years of my career. And so, long story short, I always promised to give God the credit. Number two, I would always honor, respect, and appreciate my team because I know how desperately I wanted the help when I was starting Keepro. And I just really appreciate when people buy into the vision that God has given me. And then thirdly, the staffing in the recruiting world is actually really terrible. And it takes advantage a lot of small and mid-sized companies and even larger companies. A lot of times, traditional staffing agencies are overcharging companies about 50 to 60% on hires. So, there's kind of two different components to how staffing usually works in the world. So we don't really fit into either of them, which is really cool. Traditional staffing agencies either offer up direct hire placements where they charge you one big fee of like 15 to 25% for direct hire placements within the companies they're hiring for, or there's temp to hire services where they're going to charge you 20 to 35% for temporary hires, but those companies that don't actually own or have ownership in those employees are still under the staffing agency, if that makes sense. So we operate in this unique territory of we find direct hire placements for the companies that we work for and with, and it's a flat monthly rate. And we don't overcharge them. There's no like royalty fees, there's no retention rate fees, there's nothing like that. And we believe that it's the ethical way to do recruiting to bless the business owner. And I think God gave me this vision about 4 months ago. How do we bless a billion business owners and people? Well, it's by touching the hearts and lives of millions of people that feel like they've been taken advantage of or they haven't been treated well in the hiring marketplace, or even business owners that and HR leaders that don't feel like they've really had a solid option or a good option as a staffing or recruiting agency to work with.
I'm glad you brought up the covenant aspect of your business, which is whenever I meet someone, if they tell me I'm doing this for money or I'm doing this because I've seen somebody doing it, it's profitable, I want to do it. Whatever superficial reason, I always doubt whether this business is going to have impact, whether this person could be able to change people's life. But when somebody has a strong reason bigger than themselves, there is a chance for them to become resilient, to have impact and leave legacy. And that's what I am hearing from you. I also hear that your commitment in terms of scaling it cleanly without exploiting others. I think that kind of models, they survive even during tough times, and they could be able to sustain and leave legacy. And I'm happy to hear that. With the remaining time that we have, I want to talk about faith and values. When we met, we talked about faith, the role of faith in business, in our professions, and so on. And just to give you a little bit of context, I study leaders. And one of the characteristics that I find very common, regardless of their religious denomination and affiliation, is this: they believe something higher than themselves. And when they're down, they go to that small room and they seek encouragement from what they believe from. When they are in doubt, they go to that small, because other people may not relate with them, may not comfort them, may not encourage them, may not humble them, may not give them feedback to humble themselves, to correct themselves. But these people, they don't believe that they are the author of their profession or their business and organization. They know they're accountable to a higher being, depending on their religion. And I always see these kind of people, they are convinced, they are committed, they're dedicated, and nothing stops them because of the faith that they have, which is bigger than themselves. Tell me about your foundation. How is faith and values play in your leadership, in your business?
I mean, that's a big question. I mean, for me, first and foremost, like, man, I trust Christ. I just, I've been through a lot in business. I've been through a lot in life. And I've just finally realized that it, it was never about me. And the more I surrender to that, especially in the last year, the more I've been able to see God's hand in what we do, and with my team members and with the clients that we work with and the candidates we've been able to hire for them. It's like the moment you really choose to trust Christ and you give up control and you start trusting your people is when God starts to show up in ways that you never thought. And you also have to be willing to be patient, because owning a company, running a business, I talk to millionaires and billionaires in the last 2 years, a lot more than I ever had before, especially since I moved to Fort Lauderdale. And I've just quickly realized that the most successful entrepreneurs and the business owners were the ones that were more concerned about seeing their people put food on their table, to feel like their people got opportunities to grow and develop their careers. And you are just a shepherd. You are just a vessel. The company is just a vessel to get other people to where they need to go. And you're the one that's building the vessel for them. And it's surreal. It's the most humbling experience you'll ever commit to, is building a company that's founded in Christ. Because if you make it all about yourself and your own pride and your own ego, like I've seen with dozens of entrepreneurs and business owners, it's a very dark path. And you're not nearly, quote unquote, as successful as you could be if you learn to put God in the middle of everything that you say and do. And, I would just encourage any business owners or any entrepreneurs out there that it's all about your relationship with God. It's all about understanding what His calling is on your life, not what you think it's all about, not what you want to do, not your own selfish desires. It's about what God wants for your life. And if you can surrender to that, He shows up like you'll never experience in any other part of your life.
Yeah, this is powerful. You may know this name, Dr. Miles Morrow. He wrote a book about In the Pursuit of Purpose, and that's when I think early 2000 or something I read that book, and he explained what you said, which is basically don't trust the product. You're the product. Who somebody made you, a complex being like you. Just pick our eye, just one. I don't think humans, we're not there to create an eye. A machine like this, I don't think we're yet there, even with the help of AI. And still, we don't even understand this eye. Consider the whole human being. And we're product of an intelligent being, and then trying to run this product without the manual of the creator is just reckless. That's why if you want to be successful, if you want to run your car successfully, read the manual, you drive it very successfully, you maintain it, and so on. The same thing for each one of us. There is a manual that guides for us to succeed in this world. Figuring that out, who we are, why I'm here, what I'm supposed to do, what kind of values that guide me is very important. I want to hear from you about the values, that your non-negotiables. I ask leaders this question all the time because there is a powerful saying from Roy Disney, who is the brother of Walt Disney, who said that when values are clear, making decisions becomes easier. And leaders who knows their values clearly, like you have been explaining, they know what kind of decisions they have to make. They know their non-negotiables. They know their priorities. Tell us about your top 3 values and how they dictate how you make decisions.
Man, I feel like a lot of the things that I've been alluding to throughout this conversation are going to be encapsulated into these three, or you might have heard me say these in one shape or form or another, but I go back to three. Number one, trust God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Because at the end of the day, there are things that are going to happen in business that you have absolutely no control over. You're going to get a text message about a new client that wants to work with you that you didn't even know existed. You're going to get team members that you lose that you absolutely love, and you have to be prepared for that. But at all times, trust God. Trust Him with every part of your business, every part of your being. Number two, always love people beyond the paycheck at all times. Find special, unique, wonderful, beautiful ways to make them feel special and seen. Because if you can do that, the business will run itself. And it's not to take advantage of people or to try to manipulate them. It's just you want to invest in them because you love them and you really want them to win. And even more than yourself, you want to see your people win. I'm not too worried about myself at this point. Like if everything fails, I'll go get a job. But like if you're still in business, it's because God wants you to keep going, and you have to love your people well in order for the business to keep running well. And then lastly, probably one of the most important, give yourself grace and space and your people. If you can't give yourself grace when you make mistakes, because you're going to make a lot of them. If you're running a company or you're in any type of business, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Own it, accept it, move on. And then space. Create space in your life to say, God, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go. I need you to come into this room. I need you to be in the presence and in the middle of this, to take control of what's going on, because I don't know what to do. And that only can happen when you create the space for God to intervene instead of you trying to control everything. The last word I will say to every business owner, it is not about you. So stop making it about yourself and start putting it in God's hands is the best way I can encapsulate those values.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Before we finish, how can people find you and work with you? Do you want to share your website or email where people can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very open. I have an open door policy. So if anyone wants to outreach to me and email me, it's Kejal, Kejal, at Keepro, Keepro, Inc.com. Kejal at KeeproInc.com. And you can also visit us on our website at www.keeproinc.ai. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. My name is very unique, so people can find me pretty easily on LinkedIn. So feel free to.
Thank you very much for coming here. Dear our audience, thank you for watching and being part of this conversation. I hope you got a lot of things. Reach out to Kejal. He's going to help you. He's a great guy. And also recommend people to watch this. A lot of people want to be hired. A lot of people are trying to hire. And therefore, share this conversation. They're going to benefit out of this conversation. Until I see you with another program, have a wonderful time. Thank you.